Should be a projected completion date, but that doesn't sound No, because I'm such a procrastinator. That I'm like, oh, well, I have until this time to do it, and I know that it will take me this amount of time to do it, so I'll just wait until that amount of time.
It's because you're an adrenaline junkie, see? You're an adrenaline junkie. You love it. You love the adrenaline.
And a perfectionist.
All right.
Because if I start working on something hard in advance, then I'll keep working on it after.
Oh my God, Stephanie. I saw a Snap-on belt buckle, an original Snap-on belt buckle in Albuquerque right by Family Thrift that you told me about. It's that little pawn shop right there. And it's there like 2 days ago. If you would wear a Snap-on belt buckle, that's the place to get it. It was only there 2 days ago. It's got to be there. Who's going to buy a Snap? I mean, or 3 days ago when we picked up the shelf. So, all right. I'm ready to keep going, but it's really hard.
Yeah, your type is a taker, carer, giver,
Seducer. You'll see.
Okay.
You'll see.
I think I've seen.
Oh yeah, but it failed. It failed Seducer.
But
Maybe not all the way failed.
You take care of everything you give all the time. You
Oh.
At Benyan, you did all the DJing. Here you give this.
Well, it has harmony to the second line, and the second line is nicknamed the giver as the externalizer. For me, is the distributor. So I'm very much a distributor theme. And the executor. There's another theme of it, but I can see that. You're a giver too. We're both givers in different ways. We have a lot of resonance. You know, the 2-4 and the 5-1 are also perfectly resonant. That the second line and the fifth line are like mirror images, and the fourth and the first are mirror images. We'll see as we go into it.
People all the time. They just say a word and you say yes.
Well, okay, but that's something I need to learn. Perhaps part of my growth is to be a little more discerning, to learn from the second line to say no. And I've gotten better about it. I mean, it might seem this is a pretty select group. There are certain people. Earlier today, I said no to somebody, so you know it's not the easiest, but yeah, but it happens. With a ma, that's great. See, can you get seated?
What? Are we ready to start again?
Yeah.
Anyway.
I think, yeah, it was. I had class that day. We're gonna do right now I'm looking at woodworking course and writing course. Yeah.
See.
Jonah's ready to go. Jonah's raring. He's got the rear view mirror torn off.
She is. I'm a generator. Wait, listen to this. It doesn't work. Wait, let's try this. Hey, everybody. Yeah, it doesn't. It's so awkward. It's the most awkward thing in the world. No, I'm a generator.
We're with you.
I can't.
We're with you.
I tried like 8 times. I was like, we're ready. All right. Part 2 of the 15th session. Good for us. Let's just, yeah, we've been, Michael's been holding it down. Daniel's been holding it down. We've been doing it.
Are we allowed to document?
Yeah, whatever you want to
Look
do.
at this awesome crowd.
Yeah.
You should put this on your. Do you have like a blog for this or something? Where do you?
There's Facebook.
There's Facebook.
YouTube.
Okay.
Jonah's all over YouTube.
Oh,
I know
yeah,
he's all
YouTube.
over
That's true.
YouTube.
Well, this is going on YouTube. So.
Yeah.
What's the channel called?
Type Talk.
Is it?
Type
Well, it's Jonah Dempsey, but my main program is Type Talk.
Oh.
The channel is just Jonah Dempsey. And I also have the Human Design Deconditioning Guide. Yeah.
You should just name it whatever you named your vanityplate.com.
Pureform.
Pureform.com.
Pureform.com. That's my vanity license plate. It's on the way. Oh, Human Design. This is called Human Design Catalyst. The YouTube is Human Design Deconditioning Guide. But if you just look up Jonah Dempsey, or you'll find it. I mean, it's all over YouTube. So we went over in the first half. We went over what might be considered the individual and some of the collective roles of each profile. Now, for those who missed the circuitry talk, there's 3 fundamental types of circuitry that we're wired with: individual, collective, and tribal. And in brief, the individual is you as yourself, purely as yourself, empowered to be yourself. Like, this is where creativity comes from. When you're doing art, it's literally just you and the art, or you and the world. Or this is like survivalism. You're going out and you're in the woods for a month or whatever. It's just you and the world. It's just purely you. And then there's collective. And the collective is all about sharing with anyone and everyone and being, open to all strangers everywhere. And I'm a purely collective being because I have only collective channels. So in a way, the collective can be kind of impersonal. It can be kind of like, hey, I want to go on the strip. Who wants to go with me, kind of thing. Instead of, picking the one person, it's kind of like, it's like willing to share with anyone, with the collective. And there's all sorts of goods and bads and this and that of each of these. It gets into all sorts of drama with it. But the one we're going to be talking about today is the tribal. And the word tribal in human design really means the people that you have intimate bonds with, intimate connection. This is family, friends, business associates, lovers, people you know. You really know them. It's not just a stranger. And tribal is so different from collective. Tribal is really where prejudice comes from, where bigotry comes from, where us versus them thinking, but also where so much culture comes from. In fact, it's the tribe who's against Walmart moving to town, because Walmart is very collective. Walmart is for anyone and everyone. And so the collective is raising the objective quality of life of people while homogenizing and eradicating culture. And there's all sorts of trade-offs here. The tribe is where we get the most beautiful, incredible traditions. But not art. Art all comes from the individual. Great works of art are always individual, right? But the tribe will give you, these tremendous, great works of culture that are more like traditional works and so on. All the religions and all of this. But the other thing about the tribe is that anytime all of us have to engage in all 3. And so anytime you're in anytime you have a bond with someone, and that's what our whole topic is bonding, it becomes tribal. It activates your tribal roles. So earlier I was just kind of going between individual and collective roles, just kind of willy-nilly. I was talking about some of the roles that we play, the 5th line heretic and the 3rd line martyr and stuff like that. But you can see how different it is when we get to the tribal level. And this is in intimate relationships. We could talk about business partnerships and other things, but I'm going to keep it to the most extreme tribal example, which is coupling. It doesn't matter the genders of those involved. There's nothing about that. It can be anyone of any gender, of any connection, but coupling, what it is to couple with someone. And it also doesn't matter if it's monogamous or polyamorous or polygamous or any of these other configurations. It's literally just when you are with one other person, what is happening? What role are you playing for them? And this activates our genetics. Remember, this is like a deeply mammalian genetic strategy to maintain the survival of the species. And the genes don't care about you. This goes way deeper than you as a personality or as a person. So the first line we were talking about in the individual role as the investigator. That the first line feels that their individual purpose is to investigate. Well, in their tribal role, and I'm going to talk about, just to be clear, there's a lot of different aspects of this. We're talking about a very specific thing here. I'm going to talk about how we take in the other, not what we give out, because that's a whole other topic. And we can talk about the giving out. What you get from people is a very different thing. This is how somebody pulls you in. So, because when I talk about bonding, what I really mean is how you're going to pull somebody in so they're yours. How do you get them in? How do you get them? How do you really take them in to an intimate place? And it's so funny, but the first line, its keynote is the penetrator. And we'll talk about what penetration means in this sense. It's not physical penetration. It's all the different kinds of penetration. The first line is a theme of penetration. The second line has the theme of the loner. Just leave me alone. I'm the loner. I'm going off on my own. How funny is that for the second line to be the loner as their tribal bonding theme, as their strategy to find the right mate? I'm the loner, but that's a strategy. I don't need any of you. I'm going to go off, and we'll talk about what these mean. The third line is the adventurer. And what is it to be an adventurer? To really go on adventures with people, to find people that are from faraway places, and so on. The fourth line is the companion. This is their bonding. This is how they take people in. I'll be your companion. I'll be your best friend. The fifth line is the seducer. And we'll go into exactly how that works. And the sixth line is the dreamer. And we'll get into how that is. So again, the first line penetrator, second line loner, third line adventurer, fourth line companion, the fifth line seducer, and the sixth line dreamer. So just think about how different it is when you're by yourself and you're being yourself, and say you're a 1-3 and you're an investigator martyr. And so as an investigator martyr, you're investigating, you're trying to get your solid foundation. You're also willing to burn everything to the ground and tear it down if it's not working, start over, and you have this tension between the investigator and the martyr. Well, as soon as you're attracted to somebody, the moment you're attracted to someone, the moment you feel that spark, suddenly it's like a different mask. That's what persona means, just mask. You put on a totally different persona, and you're suddenly the penetrator adventurer. Have you ever noticed when you're watching people and they don't know you see them, their face looks different, their facial expression looks different, and then they notice and they make a new facial expression? That's what this is all about. We have all different masks that we wear in different roles. And my collective mask is very, very different from my tribal mask. And in fact, a lot of confusion can happen when you mix them up. For instance, the first line as a collective externalization theme is the authoritarian. It's really good for a first line to be authoritarian with strangers. If you're speaking to 200 strangers, you want to be the authority. But in a personal tribal situation with your lover, you don't want to be authoritarian with them. You have to change that mask. If you're authoritarian, you say, no, this is the way it goes. They're not going to put up with that. So instead, it changes over. Well, yeah. You could be an authoritarian in the boardroom, not the bedroom, unless they're into it. And then you can, yeah. But anyway, so I'm going to talk about now the first line. So this is really for everyone who has first lines. Maya, the 1-4, Danny, 1-3, and then this is also for the 5-1s. Because we have this as an unconscious. We don't realize that we're doing this, but it's actually very important for us. It supports our fifth line process. So the first line is the most fundamental caveman, cavewoman. It is the pursuer and the pursued. I know two first lines who are married, John and Katie. They're both 1-3s. And because we know the same people.
Okay.
And literally, John tells me, my buddy, he goes, You know what my wife said to me the other day? She doesn't feel like I pursue her anymore. She wants me to pursue her. And it's like, what do you do? But that's the first line. They want to pursue and be pursued. He probably wants to pursue. I mean, or both. It's like, it depends which one. I mean, it's the pursuer and the pursued. So, it can go either direction. But it's basically, there has to be some element of the chase. And this is a very fundamental, this is like the caveman, the cavewoman, where you walk around with a club and you hit them over the head and drag them back to your cave. I mean, this is the most fundamental genetic strategy. But it goes deeper than that. So the first line has a deep insecurity, as we talked about. And it's driven by fear. And the fear is actually the root of all intelligence. It's a healthy fear. It's a good fear that from an evolutionary level, like I was saying earlier about the first line, the fear of what's in the unknown, the fear of the dark, the fear of what's over that mountain, leads you to learn about that and then be able to teach that to others. And that fear is actually the source of intelligence. And in this case, what this does is this makes the first line, again, the penetrator, what they're penetrating is your defensives. They're penetrating your mask, they're penetrating your persona, and they're actually a watcher, but not the voyeur. We're going to get to the fourth line, which is more voyeuristic. The first line is an investigator. And they have a long, long examination. Even after years and years in a long, long relationship, the first line may still be insecure. If you ask them, are you sure you're the right person? They'll say, I'm still uncertain if this is the right person for me. I still haven't really gotten to the bottom of it. Because it's such a long process to figure out who is right for them. What's the other person really made of? They just want to watch and watch and watch. And they're all about, so part of them still examining. They're going deep and they're looking for what is solid. So the best advice I have for the first line is to never blindly take someone in. You need this vetting process where you're basically watching them, you're penetrating them, you're getting through their defenses. And part of this is because of how vulnerable the first line is once they've allowed someone into their life, because they're very bad at ending what they've started, because the first line is a fixed line. And as I talked about earlier, it wants that stability, it wants that security, it wants the thing to continue. So, the first lines get together, it's really hard to get out of it. But you can actually watch them, and this is what was my note here, is that if you know first lines, or if you're seeing a first line, or you are a first line, but particularly if you know them, watch them penetrate you and see the different ways they do it, the ways they try to get through your defenses, the way they try to focus on your insecurities. They'll talk about the things that are embarrassing for you, or they'll try to get through your insecurities. But it's also, sometimes without even talking, it can be visual, they can be watching you. It can be olfactory, they can be they're always investigating. They're always what's that smell? What's this about? Why did you do that? What's this hair on your jacket or whatever? I don't know, but they're always investigating. And they are actually truly paying attention, which is a funny thing. A lot of people are not really actually paying that much attention. First line is very locked in. So my note here was never ask what they're doing. Never ask what are you doing? You just look over at a first line. Sometimes they're just watching you. It really annoys them to ask what they're doing because they're penetrating you. They're trying to get through. They're trying to break through your defenses. They're trying to get in to see what's going on.
Can they get in, penetrate through your strength, appeal to you, knowing that you're interested in something and
there can be some strategies there. There can be, it's very simplistic, but there can be some strategy involved of, giving you a little something and then watching how you react to it and watching how you see it. And they're watching you. They're always investigating because they're trying to see what you're really made of. And this is healthy for them. Again, there's nothing wrong with any of these bonding strategies. It's one of the strategies. The strategy of really learning and investigating with the other person and really trying to get through their defenses and see what they're made of and so on. So the second line, we have 2-4, 6-2, another 6-2. I think that's it for second lines here. So the second line is the loner. Now, how funny is this as a genetic strategy? I'm going to bond with you by being a loner. I'm going to bond with you because see you guys later. I'm doing my own thing. That was Vaughn. He just left. All right, see you later. Guess someone I got to meet, But that's a genetic strategy because part of that, the second line is all about finding the right person for them. And 6-2s do it too, but it's just unconscious perhaps for the 6-2 a little bit more.
But it's perfect. It's like alpha shit. It's leader of the pack. It's the guy who does off and is a loner on his motorcycle.
That's exactly what it is. It's exactly it. I don't need anybody. Exactly. This is exactly it. And so I wrote down some notes. It was, these notes are actually adapted from the 36 Profiles. It's a really good book, on human design by Raoul Ruku. I can share that or I can give excerpts if people are interested. But for your profile, I can tell you what parts of it. But yeah, so my notes from that, it's exactly that. It's these are all classic love stories. The first one is the pursuit. I'm pursuing, I'm chasing, or I'm being pursued. The second one, is the putting up the wall and saying, not interested. It's leave me alone, not interested, I'm the loner. But it's a genetic strategy because what it's there to do is to vet the 99% of people that are the wrong people for it. It's there because the second line is so discerning and so precise and so specific, it's to let only the right call through, the one call. If you're a second line, people are always telling you, you should do this, you should do that, well, you should move here, well, you should do that, well, you should see this, you should create that, create this thing. Everyone tells Vaughn how many times to make t-shirts, to make stickers, you should make t-shirts, why don't you make a print? But these calls fall on deaf ears because the second line is here to resist the vast majority of them, and the right person is going to get through. So for the second line, it's the theme of barriers. And basically it's give up, it will never work. That's what they say. It'll never work. You're wasting your time. Just give up. And then if the person sticks around, and then they say give up, and the person sticks around, and they keep doing it, and finally, someone will break down the wall. But the thing is, as soon as you've broken down the wall, it's almost you get more than you bargained for. If you don't know the second line, because the second line, it's almost like they've gained so much power by resisting everything else that when you actually do get them, the walls become for everybody else but not you. And suddenly they have no walls with you, and there's no boundaries, and you're locked together. And I've seen this happen with 2-4s in particular, but also probably 6-2s and other types, where once you get them, they are completely and fully yours. All the barriers are there to block the others. The moment you break the wall, they'll take you in completely, and then you're in. And it's kind of intense. And this is also something, this is kind of a theme through all the profiles, is that to take someone in is never casual. This is like a mammalian genetic thing. As soon as, and this can be at the most physical, concrete level, sex, but this can also be to sign a business contract with somebody, or to go in on an investment with somebody, or some other deep acceptance of somebody into your life where you have a deep connection with that person that you can't really easily get out of. As soon as you do that, at a genetic level, all this stuff starts to happen, and it activates these totally different sides of you. And you think that you can keep showing the same side. You can't. A totally different side of you comes out, and suddenly you're in with that person in a very different way. So it's realizing that there's really no such thing as casual sex. There really isn't. Because as soon as you've been with that person, assuming you're ever going to see them again, the moment you see them again, it's changed. You have a new bond. The third line is the adventurer. So, and these are my notes from the. So if you read the 36 roll gates, I think it's the 36 rolls, I think the book is called. They go into these in detail, but this is particularly the tribal part of it. So the adventurer is the third line. So we should be familiar with the third line as the theme of bonds made and broken. This is the conventional look at it. But the other thing to realize that's equally important is that the third line has a genetic responsibility to maintain the gene pool by preventing too much similarity in the genes, because then a disease can come along and wipe everybody out. So in the olden days, this would be like the third lines who volunteer to go to mate with the other tribes, because they need to bring in new genes. Or if you've seen Midsummer, it's like the guy who recruited them to come. He's the third line. I was thinking of Midsummer earlier with the bonding strategies. I didn't want to talk about it, but I really was. For those who've seen it, it's tribal. Once you're in, you're in. But yeah, the third line is the adventurer. So they're not interested in the person next door. They're not interested in someone from their town. They're interested in the exotic. They're interested in people with different beliefs, different genetic backgrounds. They're really interested in a lot of variety and difference. And they have the strongest burden. Their genetic burden is that they're responsible for the health of the gene pool. And that gene pool happens, that it stays healthy through these radically different people coming together. And so this is someone who goes on vacation, and they're in some totally different country with somebody that they would never usually be with, and they hook up for a one-night stand, and guess what? One of them gets pregnant, and pretty soon they're married, and they're like, this is the fish out of water, the odd couple theme, the apples and oranges relationships. This is the relationships you go, wow, how did they end up together? Because, well, the third line is looking for the exotic, it's looking for the different. Now, it also has promiscuity built in, and this doesn't have to be sexual promiscuity. All these things can be deconstructed different ways. It can be ideological promiscuity, wanting to try out every different belief system, or it can be wanting to travel to a lot of different places to kind of see what works and what doesn't. But it can also just literally be trying out relationships. Whether or not the actual physical act of sex is ever consummated, it can just be seeing what it's like, being with a lot of different people and interacting with those people, and seeing, how it goes. And of course, there's the theme of problems, mistakes, and experimentation. So the third line really does have a strong burden here. They get a lot of flack for making mistakes, but they're really maintaining the health of our gene pool, so we should give them all kudos, because they're the ones, going through it. And it's just remember, the genes don't care about us. That was my note here. The genes The genes don't care about us. We're just, we are fulfilling their genetic imperative to procreate and to maintain the health of the human species. The fourth line is the companion. And so, 2-4, you can kind of make up the things here. 2-4 is the loner companion. How does that work? It's the loner who will also be your friend. Or the 1-3, the, penetrator adventurer. It's kind of funny how these work, right? You can kind of make up the little archetype for who that person is. The 3-5 being the adventurer, seducer, and so on. So the fourth line is the companion. This is the ultimate friend zone theme. Fourth lines get friend zoned. They get attracted to people. And then they find out everything because they're such a good companion. They find out everything about that person's intimate life. And my partner does this to me and does that to me. And they're there, and I'll be your friend. And they get to witness it all, but they don't get to have it because they're seen as the friend. But it's also the fourth line doesn't say, I want to have you, I'm attracted to you, I want to take you in. They say, I'll be your friend. I'll be your friend. Hey, want to be friends? That's what the fourth line says, Let's hang out. Let's be friends. It's very much... and you can see that there's a harmony to the penetrator here, because the fourth and the first line have harmony, where the penetrator's waiting to check that person out. It's vetting them. It's observing them. They're kind of under their observation period. It's waiting to see what they're made of, to try to get through their defenses. Well, the fourth line's the same. It's like, I'll be your friend, and then I'll see what you're really like. I'll see what you're really like when you tell me how you really feel about all these people, and you trust me, and I'm your confidant.
Is this why I've literally never been on a Tinder date?
Good.
Never.
Don't. You know what you should do?
I've been on all of the apps.
No, you know what you can do is Bumble, because Bumble is the one. If you're a fourth line, use the one where your friends pick the person for you, or you have to be connected to your Facebook friend group or something like that. Don't use the one for strangers. Just a couple of things for the fourth lines out there. I always say your power and your influence grows through your friend network, through your opportunity network, like I was saying earlier. But weirdly enough, the more stable your relationship is, the more your power and influence grows to obtain a new relationship. So you can actually get a healthier relationship. You trade up. The fourth line is a trading up. It's the opportunist. And so if you're single, you're going to not be able to have a very healthy relationship. The person's going to be too busy. They don't have time for you. They're seeing other people, this and that. But you still take the relationship because then you become more appealing to other people. And then you're able to leave them. Like, never leave a relationship. I know this sounds so bad. It sounds really bad. But never leave a relationship till you're in another relationship. For fourth lines. For fourth lines only. Not anybody else. There's not anybody else. This is only for the fourth lines. Never leave a job till you're in another job. It's like anchors. You drop your anchor, and then you take up your anchor, but you don't want to take them all up at once. You know what I mean? You want to... So, okay. The fourth line is pretty voyeuristic. I mean, that's a big part of it. They really are voyeurs. Not like the first line where they're investigating. The fourth line is like, they want to see into other people's lives and see how they're acting, see what they're doing, and just really watch it all. And so each of these have a hook. They all have a hook. The first line hook, as I was talking about, they get hooked when they are penetrating, but also, I guess maybe the pursuit is the hook. And the second line has this whole hook of... I love no. I guess no is the hook there. They say no, and it challenges the other to try to turn that no into a yes. I know this is all very complicated in our Me Too culture. We have to be really careful here to realize this is, consent matters, and it's very important, and just because someone's a second line doesn't mean that no means yes. It's just that for the second line, no is the hook to see who sticks around, to see who's going to stay there. Respecting the no. It's not that the no is supposed to be disrespected. It's that if the person just keeps hanging out and keeps trying until the no turns into a yes, then that's the second line's hook. The third line has their own adventurism hook, or adventurous, kind of, it's like the Odd Couple hook. It's like, wouldn't it be the craziest thing to have such a bizarrely different kind of connection? It's the hook of the exoticism or something. It's the hook of when you're really attracted to somebody because of how different they are. Even fetishism, which is also kind of morally ambiguous and can get kind of complex. And then the fourth line hook is, I'll be your friend. I'll be your friend. You can tell me anything. You can tell me anything, and I'm gonna allow you to say anything you want to me. I'm gonna listen to it all. It's like the therapist. The therapist can be a fourth line as well, and can actually gain an intimacy. Now, of course, they shouldn't, for professional ethics, but there still is. The more somebody confides in you and the more you listen, the more you build up this intimate. It's a form of intimacy. It really is. So the advice for the fourth lines: never make love to a stranger. Never do business with a stranger. Stranger danger. All right.
I need an adult.
We're getting to the end here, so 2 more. And these are short ones. Okay, so the fifth line is the seducer. So what is the fifth line? Is the seducer. It's all about seduction. And I thought about, what is seduction really? And I think there's actually 2 parts to it. First, I thought that seduction had some relation to teaching, because I'm a 5-1, and I realized that part of my bonding with people is when I can teach them or learn from them. But then I realized, and also there is that whole theme of, crushes on teacher and so on, but I realized that teaching is more of a first-line thing. It's a first-line thing. Mm-hmm. It's how do you transmit information to each other for mutual success and survival. So I actually came around to realizing, and this was also with the help of the book, of the 36 roles, that seduction is not just come home with me tonight. Seduction is calling to people to try to access parts of themselves that they've lost touch with, or try to reactivate. It's like there's a real challenge. So it's calling out to intimacy in the other, but it's really calling out to that part of that person. It's like the best person to seduce is the one who says, "I'll never love again." And there's a harmony to the second line here. You see that the 5 and the 2 are harmony. The 5 is the caller, the 2 is the one to be called, that says, leave me alone, but maybe I'll get through. So, but the fifth line is really, the ones we're trying to seduce are not the ones that are easy to seduce. We're actually looking for difficulty. It raises the juices. It gets everything really, really going when there's a real difficulty there. Not just from the second line, it could be any type, but they're the kind of person where what we're trying to seduce in them is we're actually calling out to a capacity in them that they've lost. They've decided that they're pessimistic and they're never going to love again, or they've decided that they've given up on having a fulfilling relationship, or, that is what the seducer wants. And I'm actually thinking of Kierkegaard's famous classic, The Seducer's Diary, where, to kind of paraphrase, it's about the seducer, and he basically says, he's going to seduce this woman, but he says, first I need to make her. He doesn't want her to want him. He wants her to want him to want her. So I'm going to make her try to seduce me to try to get me to want her. And when she's able to successfully make me want her, is when I will have succeeded in my seduction. It's so great. I love that. It's not like I want you to want me. It's more just I want you to want me to want you. It really is. I'm not kidding. This is how seduction works. But it's about calling out to the other and teaching them. There is a teaching element as well. So, and it's also, it sounds a little weird to say, but the fifth line, the same way that the fifth line has a theme of gaining access to the highest echelons of influence and power, even though they're oftentimes behind the scenes, but they really do. I touched on this earlier, but the fifth line can often go right to the CEO of a company and get to be their friend or something like that. The fifth line has this seductive field that's able to kind of go right to the top. Well, similarly, what the fifth line is doing in relationships is oftentimes practicing seducing people who are really out of their league. So I hate to put it such a simple way, but it's almost like when you ever see people and you're like, well, how the hell did that person, what the heck? This person's a millionaire and they're amazing and they're this and that, and like they're with like Seth Rogen or whatever in like one of those movies, you know what I mean? She's going to be the president of the United States and she's dating Seth Rogen, really? Like, well, maybe he's a fifth line, that's part of the theme. The part of the theme is the difficulty to seduce the person that's has such a higher, but it's not just, I don't want to make it a superficial thing about status or something, but again, these all have themes and they have different levels of the themes, and this is the theme of the one who's kind of, gaining access to somebody who's really difficult or really challenging, the one that nobody could get, the fifth line wants to get, and they're going to try to get that person. And finally, that brings us to the sixth line, the dreamer. And the dreamer is an interesting one. I always have a hard time with the sixth line keynotes. I don't really understand. I guess my first thought when I read about the dreamer is that you're looking for the soulmate. But I think what the soulmate is for the sixth line changes, because first you go through your third line phase. Through your 20s, And you basically completely give up on the idea of there ever being a soulmate. So by the end of your 20s, you're like, soulmate is stupid. There's no such thing. It's all a myth. I'm pessimistic as hell. I don't believe any of it. Like, you'll never convince me. You know, and it's just completely like throwing away any childish notion of finding the one true love, right? But, and what can happen then is that there can be this, so here's the weird way that the thing works. So I guess on the one hand, it's like a prana, it's a breath. So you start believing the soulmate, and you slowly, gradually, actually maybe you go down. You slowly go into the dregs. You've lost it. And then you slowly rebuild your understanding of the soulmate, but you understand like the perfection of imperfection, or you understand how, yes, you can have that truly meaningful bond with the best or the perfect person for you, and you're great together, but it's not what you thought it looked like. That's one level of it. But then the other is that the dream is actually, so that's the level of you don't give up on the dream. But then the other level of is you actually do kind of give up on the dream. And this is why the sixth line is always so complex. The sixth line is very non-dual. It's very much like going two at once. Because the other version of it is you believe in the soulmate. Then, when you get to your 30s, you go up on the roof. It's the sixth line. And you're distant and you're detached and objective. But you're still holding on to that dream, and that's the coulda, woulda, shoulda. And you're looking back going, if only I didn't do that, it would have been okay. Like a lot of times sixth lines end up with kids in their 30s, or they end up by their 30s and things like that, and they go, well, I shouldn't have done this because that changed my ability to this, and or like I shouldn't have, been with this person, and there's all this regret. And that's actually really unhealthy for the sixth line. The sixth line is supposed to let go of it, so in that sense you have to let go of the dream. Because it's like you're saying you've given up the dream, but you're still in that coulda, woulda, shoulda pessimism, so you're still holding on to the dream, right? This is also for you, Michael. You're 6 too. I mean, this is very important, right? To ask yourself, am I still holding on to the dream even while I say I've given up the dream? And then the Chiron is when the sixth line re-enters life, and that can be what they've grown towards, which is truly leaving the dream behind and fully surrendering to what it is that's right there in front of them. Leaving behind all ideals and all pessimism about the failed ideals, and going beyond the pessimism and the optimism, going beyond the idealism and the realism, you could even say, the harsh realism of there's no such thing. You actually go beyond that, and you go, well, actually, I don't know. I'm surrendered to what I actually have, and there's a perfection in that surrender. All right, that's all I have. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you. Any questions, concerns, comments? Maya?
How does the unconscious mind play into these bonding strategies? Does that you but you're not aware of it, I guess?
That's exactly it. Yeah, you can think of the 2-4 where what they're aware of is leave me alone, and then what they're not aware of is I'll be your friend. Or for you, as a 1-4, what you're aware of is I need to know and have this solid foundation and have this solid security in this. But you might not realize that this unconscious fourth line is constantly building so many opportunities. You have opportunities you might not even be aware of, an influence you might not be aware of, that you've built in this tremendous network. So that's exactly it. Yeah. And the other thing I'll say also is that there's a physical component oftentimes to the unconscious line. So like a conscious first line is going to be very mentally first line investigating. I have an unconscious first line, so my body will be physically investigating. Like if I'm getting to know somebody, I'm oftentimes kind of like trying to see what they're made of. Like I'm shoving them or knocking them around a little bit or grabbing them or like testing, kind of just like seeing what they're made of. Like, or, a 3-5 is going to have, like I was saying, about the unconscious seductive quality.
Can I read you a poem I wrote?
I would love the poem. That would be fantastic. I'm going to come over there, though, and then you can read it. Okay. It's recording.
Tribal coupling activates genetics. Genes don't care about you. How someone pulls you in. How did I get to this intimate position? Third line adventurer. Unconscious fifth line seducer. No pursuit necessary. It's never casual. Bonds made and broken. So much consent, access, permission. Seeking a challenge.
Yeah.
Nice.
Sure.
Talking about genetics and life, any thoughts about the free
Free will. Okay. Well, free will is means so many different things to different people, but what does free will mean to me? Free will to me is essentially the freedom to acknowledge or to resist something. It's like a forced choice. And so I have the freedom at any given point to accept or reject what's going on around me. And that's my freedom. But there's a lot of also creative freedom. That's another meaning of freedom. And creative freedom is never one-sided. You know, you paint a little bit and then you see how the paint changes. It's a conversation. It's the freedom to choose how you react or interact in a conversation. So I do believe in freedom, but it's within limitations.
Can you break these systems and then create something new just based off of everything you learned?
Like these, what system like human design?
Could I break that and just hodgepodge?
That's such a third line question. Can I break it and literally burn it down to the ground like an anarchist and create something else new?
A bit of everything in this, but
Well, yeah, I mean,
it's not very fun.
what the third line can absolutely do is test everything out. And in fact, if a third line just accepts something without trying it out for themselves, I'll know that they're deeply, deeply disturbed. Because it's the best thing. I rely on third lines to tell me what doesn't work. They come back and go, you know what, I tried to do that thing you said in the relationship where I tried to give him something practical, and the practical thing didn't actually help anything. I still got burned at a stake and chased with a pitchfork, and, you know, if that happens, then... No, but I mean...
break the pitchfork.
You just break the pitchfork. Yeah, there you go. No, I mean, there's a lot of creativity in the third line, too. Like, there's a lot of creativity that happens through experimentation.
Yeah.
And absolutely, you can evolve these systems. You can create your own system. You can throw away what doesn't work. You can pick and choose. Try it out. I mean, it's an experiment. So you experiment, you see what works and what doesn't. And then you see for yourself. And you go, well, this was right on. That was hearsay. This was opinion. This was, you know...
Because you can develop the traits of the other ones, right? And just kind of... Or does it just
Well,
not work that
no.
way?
You can. And also the other thing is whenever you date somebody of the other type, you're going to get pulled into that game. So if I date a fourth line, I'm going to get into that whole companionship best friend game with them. And this is how we condition each other. And it's the same thing with... I went into it a little bit last week, but I didn't really... Last week was a little too scattered. I realized last week that we need to really focus on particular, you know, because partnership is such a huge topic. You could fill up months of just talking about this stuff. But there's another aspect of it, which is what kinds of circuitry you have. Now, for partnership, the only circuitry that I have is individual. Even though I'm a collective person, I have an individual gate, which is one of the love gates. And it's actually the gate 12 that I'm using to talk to all of you right now, which is... You know, romance to me, what I bring to a relationship is this reading poetry to each other, reading each other to sleep, having long conversations. It's very verbal, it's very, you know, but then somebody else might bring a lot of physical sexuality, particularly if they have gate 36. If I'm dating them, that can be a highly sexual relationship, and I can enjoy all of that, but then as soon as I'm dating somebody else who doesn't have one of those sexual gates, I'm back to a verbal relationship. So we all bring that to the other. You know, if I'm a fifth line, anyone...
Who should I date?
Everyone, you're a 3-5. That's part of it. Everyone wants.
Who would be the most challenging?
Some like homogenous relationships. Like you said, you were talking about like your 1-3 married couple.
Oh yeah.
So like what like
Oh, when they're both the same profile.
Yeah, when you're both the same profile.
Well, yeah, when you're both the same profile,
That's comforting, and you know.
there's going to be some comforting because you're basically you're not going to be bringing anything new to that person. They have to learn to adjust to. So you're a fourth line. If you're with another fourth line, you're both connecting with each other through friendship, and so that's totally fine. If you're with a fifth line, that fifth line is going to want to have this whole seduction game play out, and you're going to want them to be confiding all of their innermost secrets, and you're both going to be, and you can do that, and that's what's beautiful about it is that each of us can bring to the other a certain theme that they get to experience. So by the end of it, we've experienced all the themes. It's just which one do we bring? It really is the question. Yeah, I mean, you can experiment. You could try to like not do the whole third line thing. For instance, to try to not do it would be to try to never break a bond, and that's really hard to do. The third line is all about continually reinventing what kind of relationship it is. So the third line wants to continually reinvent it. So every time you separated for a few days, you're kind of back to square one again. I was joking about the whole 1,000 first dates you get to have with the person. And you could try to not do that. I don't know if you'd be able to, because this is all so mechanical. So for instance, not in any romantic sense, but I've known Daniel, we've known each other maybe 6 months now. I could probably write out 10 or 15 different configurations of what our friendship has looked like. From potential music collaborators, to hanging out playing video games, to going on adventures together, to this whole human design interaction. I mean, even within a matter of a couple of days, I didn't see Daniel for a week. That was enough to break the bond and recreate it. Even this time, I didn't see you for 2 days. That's enough to break the bond and recreate it as new people to a degree. We're always kind of...
man, once you slept on my van, you're kind of in my family as far as I'm concerned.
I slept on that. Which was Daniel's idea. It was an incredible idea, and it was a great experiment, and it worked. It was a success. Although I hope the van's not damaged. I don't think I damaged it. I literally slept on top of his van.
Jonah, what was the language?
Amazing. Although the van was really hot, my first thought was, God damn, this metal is hot, and it's sunny. And it was really high up, and I thought, how am I going to get down? And I looked over the edge, and it was 7 feet down or something. I'm like, oh crap, because it was pretty high up.
on either
It is
side.
at 7'2". It's such a tall vehicle.
It's a tall van. I was like, shit, I don't want to. That's what I thought. Well, thanks, Danny, for hosting. A little cheers for Danny. This is
I
the...
have a quick question.
Yes, please.
So as a 5,
Yes.
and we save everybody's day,
Yeah.
who saves our day? Because I don't save my own day.
Other 5s, I think. I don't know. I mean, hopefully. But the 6s can actually be extremely helpful to us because they can save our reputation, which is even more important than saving the day for us. Because they're objective. They're the only ones. And I don't even know about 4 6s. Maybe you can try it. But I think it's the 6 2s and the 6 3s that really save our reputation.
You got Justin.
Yeah, that's the one. Because, for us as 5s, it's hard. We have to manage our reputation, or people gossip about us. They make up stories about us. There's a lot of resentment because we can kind of skip a lot of steps, We can, when I used to work at Amazon.com, within 6 months of working there, I befriended the executive team and was getting invited to private parties with Jeff Bezos and playing jazz piano for them. And then I got all these promotions and stuff, and everybody, even my mentor was one of the top people in the company. And I was 22 years old, and there were people there, of all different ages, who hated my guts, who were waiting for me to make a single mistake. If I made one mistake, they were going to pounce. And I had to walk the line. It's that's the 5th line thing, and so much expectation, and, so a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure on the 5th line. And 3 5s feel it too. 3 5s can get, something interesting that Ross said when he first started doing human design in Ibiza, which is where it all came from. He found a really extremely disproportionate number of 3 5s were in Ibiza. And his conclusion was that they'd all run away. Because they'd all been, had so many, crazy things happen. And they were adventurers, and they wanted to go to some exotic place. And, but also, they just, were chased out of town and stuff. It happens to 5th lines, too, believe me. So, no, it'd be interesting to... Huh? Have you been chased with pitchforks, Daniel? You just break the pitchfork. That's what you do.
So Jonah,
they're just kind of
I
standing there
didn't
with
get
it.
to the end of it. So, because you say it's genetic and we are acting more or less within a type, more or less, right? So the free will basically is not too much of a choice of strategy because we are in a type, but the free will is to be able to potentiate yourself, whoever you are. So it's...
To know what your weaknesses are, right? And to work on them and to be careful. Like a cheat sheet.
Sure. Or it could be, or like Hamlet. Think of the example of Hamlet. What is the free will of the actor, the actress, the person playing Hamlet? The free will of the actor playing the part. That's the real question, because they can't really change the lines too much in this analogy, but they can change the delivery a lot. And we actually even get to change the lines. We just have to deal with certain limitations that were kind of.
Usually, I start.
I mean, the idea here, and you can experiment with it, is that even if I didn't say anything, just from my facial expressions and just from the way I present myself and my choice of clothing, and
Really?
basically all of these
Because I think
cues,
maybe it's
I'm
like
indicating
they
something.
feel like
We're constantly signaling, we don't necessarily realize what
I
we're
just like
signaling. And some people are signaling, leave me alone, and other people are signaling, I'll be your friend, or both, in your case. And some people are signaling,
because I'm not like, hey,
all these other things, and it's just like an animal signaling. And that's their strategies for how they
which I was
attract
seeing
a mate. You're going to be attracted to this, I'm going to get you because I'm signaling to you, I don't care, or something. And that certain people are going to really go for that. Or I'm signaling, you know, I'll seduce you, and then they'll be like, no, you're not. And
Or
they'll
usually
start
let
to,
people talk, like,
start the game.
initiate,
Yeah.
and then when they do, and then I'm.
Can you avoid the? I mean, I don't know. I mean, you can experiment. You tell me. You can try it. But, I mean, it's you know, it's
So
the
you
way it's
can't
done.
avoid your facial gestures.
Or I want to
They're
like
so
know about them first
subconscious.
before I.
Yeah.
and they give
Yeah.
up so much
I'd like your
information
picture,
to another
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's all worth experimenting with. You know, these are just like. It's basically anytime we're describing something, it's kind of like that whole parable of people describing the elephant. And one says, well, it's round, and one says, well, it's this, and one says, there, it's in a dark room, and they're all describing different parts of it. So different people are going to have totally different experiences of it, and I'm trying to kind of use fairly generic keywords, which might lead some to assume that it's the Barnum effect or the Fourier
I'm
effect,
talking that very.
which is where you say
very-
things that are
very-
so generic.
Yeah, the
they
very
apply to
strict
anyone.
thing of like.
So there's a real
I've never
art
seen
to
you
being
before,
more generic than that, meaning it doesn't apply to just anyone. Not everyone here is a hermit. Not everyone here is a loner. Not everyone here has big walls, right? But still generic enough that there's so many different ways it can apply because it can play out in so many different ways. And there's a real art there. It's a real challenge to find that right level of how you.
My two friends that did, one of them is totally a hermit, and that's what she got. She's a hermit. Terrible. And she likes to my other friend seems shy, but like to network, but she's opportunist and just like that one. But doesn't.
But I'm sure.
And when she tries to, she doesn't.
Yeah, we're all kind of limited. The fourth line is limited by their friend network.
Yeah.
My fourth line friend who's a barista, is not going to be able to get a job outside of being a barista until she gets to know somebody. But for me as a fifth line, I can absolutely cold call and meet strangers out of the blue and convince them or whatever. I've gotten all my jobs as strangers. It's not through
We can't do things
just through getting headhunted or through like reputation, through a public reputation. So even became a design person in New York. People check my reputation and go, okay, this person has a reputation. All right, I'll talk to them. Like they want to check that. It's kind of no, but I'm a fifth line, and the fifth line projects. I'm just a generator, so it's good old-fashioned hard work. Elbow grease. That's all it has.
What is projector add to the
Well, no, a projector 3-5 compared to like Daniel being a generator 3-5, there's going to be big differences. I mean, for instance, for Daniel being a generator,
and like have been friends for a while.
maybe that's on purpose. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you found it.
No.
And then
Got it. Fifth line sounds really nice. So, like, being a projector, a big part of it will be that you kind of have to be invited into that experimentation process. So that'd be part of it. Another part of it will be that it might be harder to kind of get out of that experimentation process because projectors tend to really get in things, like in relationships for a long time, stuff like that. I can imagine a generator 3-5 might jump around through all relationships. A projector 3-5 might stay in the same relationship, but continually reinvent that. And so, like, now we're friends, okay, now we're lovers, now we're business partners, now we're this. And so, like, there's a little bit of a difference.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's like pretty good.
Well, because projectors really do lock in with people, and There's a really good talk on projector for free on Jovian Archive. There's also the projector empowerment series. I don't know if I see that, but they talk about they talk about basically projectors get kind of locked in things. And Michael is a projector. Is also
and then we're like good.
And yeah, for you,
or we
like
mutually
very
agree,
long-term relationships.
kind of
The
like
third line is continually experimenting and trying different things in that.
But I think it's really cool. I think you're really cool, and like.
Yeah, or if you do get stuck in one, you try to make it work by trying all different things with it. Trying all different things. Like, it's very experimental.
The one that really like that. It did sort of because
there's so many right ones, but nobody right
and like something that I didn't.
Spoken like the true second line.
But it's kind of letting go of that, right?
Well, for the third line, the right one will be the one that allows you to constantly make the relationship over and over and not get sick of it. Because the third line, like I've dated third lines, and the third lines, you're going to, at a certain point, want to break up. And then as soon as you break up, you're going to want to see what it's like to be again. You're going to see what it's like in the pool, see what it's like out of the pool. Like, just try it out. And so someone who's like, okay with that, and just like gives it like patience, gives a lot of time, lets that process happen, and just allowing it to continue. It's like a living thing. For a third line, it's really a vital process. The relationship is alive when it's changing. So it stops changing today. So it's actually good and healthy for it to be changing. Just to realize that if you're with the third line, they're gonna bring change to them, and you get to try a bunch of different configurations. You get to try monogamy, you get to try non-monogamy, you get to try friendship, you get to try only seeing them once a week, you get to try long distance, you get to try whatever, all the different ways to do it.
So it's always like that kind of like still dependent on it all.
That's the right person for you. That's a great person for you. My friend who's a third line, he's a 3-5 in Seattle. He just turned 60. And he's been seeing someone for 8 years who lives in Ohio. Well, they see each other, but when they're apart, I don't know. I don't really ask. But the way he put it is he's very poetic. He's a poet. He has Pisces Mercury. But he said, life is a palimpsest, which is the word for lines that have been erased and drawn over and erased and drawn over. Life is a palimpsest of elliptical orbits. So the partially overlapping elliptical orbits, you go in and out of each other's orbit. So he might be in her orbit 3, 4, 5, 6 times a year, and each time is like first date again, and like they fall in love again, and they're together again, they love each other, and then they're apart, and every time they see each other, it's like recreating. And it's wonderful for them because it creates something new and living and alive. And so much better. He was married before, and like he likes this so much better because he gets to continually recreate and reinvent. Like I said, third line's get 1,000 first dates. It's the best. With the same person. That's what I mean. So, it's a beautiful thing.
Okay.